All right, let's get into this discussion now. South Africa has recently seen an upsurge in the number of attacks against particularly lesbian, gay and transgender people. As of the 29th of June this year, there are still 42 pending hate crime cases, with 30 cases being for murder and 12 for rape, reported in different provinces across South Africa. Now, this despite our constitution having a guided legal reform on discrimination, protection of the rights of people of different sexual orientation, gender identity, gender expression, or sex characteristics. To talk more about the response and interventions being made by civil society organisations and law enforcement agencies, we are joined by John Jeffery. He's the Deputy Minister of Justice and Constitutional Development, as well as Steve Letsike, who is the Executive Director of Access Chapter 2. Thanks to both of you for being with us, and welcome to Morning Live.
Good morning,
Leanne.
Thank you
for having me.
All right, let's begin with you, Deputy Minister. Of the 42 pending cases, as mentioned in the introduction, 30 cases are for murder, 12 are for rape. Can you give us an update on their status in terms of investigations and prosecutions?
Yeah, look, I don't have the exact detail with me. There were, in the media briefing that we did, the details were given about how many were before the court. Those cases spread back. They are the unresolved cases that people haven't been found guilty of, and they stretch back for a couple of years. This year, I think it's been at about 18. It might have gone up. That happened this year, but basically, in some of the cases, people have been arrested. People are awaiting trial in custody, many of them. So the key issue from our side is to ensure that these cases are tracked and then that the law enforcement deal with them properly. That would be the police and the prosecution. And we are working with them to ensure that that happens.
Yeah. I mean, Steve, if we can get perhaps maybe a more accurate number from you, because as you say, there are so many that go unreported, these cases, for fear of intimidation, harassment that's being experienced by the LGBTIQ plus community.
No, indeed, Leanne. Look, there's really quite a concerning rise now. As DM says, the cases have spiked. We have now, with additional to this weekend, over 14 cases that have been reported in the last 3 months. There is a rise of hate crimes in South Africa. And of course, the entity have met for the first time after a while that has been not active. The task team that is required to rapidly respond to hate crimes. And of course, in the national task team meeting, you have, for 2 cases, of which indeed a majority have seen the light of investigation arrests. However, I think, it's the slow pace of which we want to see justice, that is shown to this process or cases that we've seen.
I mean, we know that, and Steve, I bring this to you again. We know that this is the protection and rights of the LGBTIQ plus community are enshrined and guaranteed in our constitution. But from what I'm hearing, what we're seeing, it seems that these lives that are being led by this community are traumatic and absolutely unsafe. I mean, give us an idea of how bad it really is on the ground.
No, look, Leanne, it's quite bad because, I mean, you're not only dealing with, the safety issue, you're dealing with attitude, you're dealing with behavior that perpetuate an act at the end. So if you have homophobic and transphobic society, one really, safety and security and even peace that we have spoken about has a question of integrity and dignity that is actually unpacked by society. So what we are seeing, it's stigma, it's discrimination. We're seeing this happening in the workplace, in the school level. We're seeing this happening in community. But there's also a contribution that is played by religious fundamentalism as well in this regard. We've seen conversion practices taking place traditionally, medically, but also, religiously. So these are some of the challenges that LGBTI people find themselves. Now, the question is, and as you've stipulated, in a country like ours that outlines the vision of equality-based society, and also that its preamble that speaks about South Africa belongs to all, has South Africans really understood the responsibility and also the limitation that we have of these rights enshrined in the Constitution? We don't think so. We think South Africa is becoming more homophobic, but also we think government steps which should be better, across the Department of Justice, all the various departments, should be actually ensuring the protection and the fulfillment of these rights against LGBTI people.
Yeah. Deputy Minister, a national task team on the rights of the LGBTI persons was established in 2011, and this was by the Minister of Justice and Constitutional Development. And the aim was to strengthen government's ability to respond to the needs of the community and to strengthen the capacity of civil society organizations to deliver on related services. How visible has it been in preventing hate crimes over the years?
Yeah, the National Task Team was set up in response to requests from civil society about attacks on, at that stage, there were a lot of attacks on lesbian women, the so-called corrective rapes. It has been, I think, successful as a good partnership between government and civil society. Got praise from the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights as a best practice. It has had some difficulties recently. In the last year with issues such as COVID and then also some internal problems within the department. But we had our first meeting of the year on Wednesday, and we're really expecting it to move. I think that the issue is, look, I think from surveys, generally society's acceptance of people of different sexual orientation, gender identity, etc., is improving. However, there is a group which currently, recently this year, or there are groups, and they're across the country, it's not an organized thing, which seem to be showing greater intolerance. And it's an issue of tackling where that is coming from and then engaging on it. So if it's sort of religious intolerance from some religious groups, then which religious groups can we engage with them? Can we look at ways of trying to make them understand the consequences of what they are saying? So strategies need to be tailored to fit the problem.
Yeah. Steve, help us out here. I mean, when we talk about it needs to be tailored to help the problem, when we talk about the fact that, it seems okay, but then there is absolutely a rise in the levels of violent crimes. What's going wrong? I mean, in your honest opinion, do you think that the ministry is doing enough? Can more be done? And what's really at the heart of the problem here?
Look, I think, civil society organizations, human rights actors, activists have shown in numerous ways, even academics, that there's ongoing patterns of crime, especially targeting people on the basis of their sexual orientation, gender identity. And of course, this is by of which have been defined as hate crimes. And this is where we see quite a lot of killings, rapes, that have been documented. And of course, a number of them also go undocumented. I mean, the levels of empowerment study, the other studies, Love Not Hate campaign showed 88% of LGBTI people don't even report crimes against them. So it's really a big problem. And I mean, this is not new. Hate crimes have been going on for the last few decades in South Africa. So the fact that, our criminal justice system, which is on its own very strong, the procedure itself, it's quite strong. But the hate element is what is not necessarily brought so much forward. And there's a missing gap, which is the hate crimes legislation. And I think we have a responsibility. Government has the responsibility. Is the ministry, is the government doing enough? Enough, it's a very understatement Leanne. I think government can do better. Government has been silent. I mean, of course, we've seen recently, because there was a call out by civil society collective to say, speak up. Why are you silent as government? I mean, and also we don't want just government that only talks. We want government that's acting. I mean, one of the biggest problems that we've also seen even in the NTT is the absence and the proactiveness of South African police service. I mean, it was raised even by the government itself, that South African police service have been really, really silent and not a proactive member in the rapid response team. So we cannot accept that a police service that is supposed to protect, that is supposed to help prevent and enforce the rule of law, has not been active in curbing the hate crimes that we see. I mean, the confidence even in terms of the police have really crippled. I mean, it's crippling. If LGBTI people, if women are feeling unsafe, we have to do something.
Yeah, and I mean, that's another major issue, is that you find that even when something is committed against anybody in this community, going into a police station to report it, the manner in which you're treated is less than dismal.
It's unacceptable, yeah.
I mean, those experiences, we've spoken on this program about it for years, Steve, and this is not the first time we're talking about it. Has it improved in any way, where you literally sometimes have police officers laughing at members of the community, or just kicking them out and telling them, we don't want to see you, go sort this out yourself?
Look, these experiences continue. I mean, we've seen there's a police station in the Motherwell in the Eastern Cape, just during this rise of incidents where a lesbian woman went there, to report an incident, and she experienced secondary victimization. I mean, it can't be acceptable that where service ought to be given equally, but service or people and civilians are experiencing secondary victimization. It can't be acceptable. Now, the question is government implementing consequence management in this case, where people are investigated, people are held accountable, and also we root out the incompetence that we find in the system, because it cannot be acceptable where we've been talking about incidents after incident, but then there's no progress in showing and building confidence to society. And I think we have that responsibility. I mean, of course, the other issue is that have we seen some of the progress? I mean, I can tell you the cases that have been reported in the last few weeks, of course, what the rapid response team, or even, the case investigation, they have been investigation. There's been arrest, as Deputy Minister had stipulated. But I think what we want now, we cannot do it in the cost of life. We need to prevent a death. There is cost of life. People are dying, and we can't just only look at it in the reactive approach.
Yeah. DM, I mean, a lot's been said, obviously, and I suppose the question needs to be asked directly to you. And we talk about the law, and we talk about the justice system, and we talk about the policing. Do you honestly believe that there is a massive commitment to protect the rights of the LGBTIQ plus community?
Yeah, and I think there's a very strong commitment from the South African government to protect the rights of people of different sexual orientation, gender identity, gender expression, sex characteristics. The problem, though, is that you will find certain individuals. The issue with the police, steps have been taken, both with crimes against LGBTI people and gender-based violence, to improve the services at police stations, to ensure that there are victim-friendly rooms where people can give their statements. I've been at a meeting that the Minister of Police had with police officials, ordinary police, and where he told them that if you send a woman home who's come to report a domestic violence abuse case, you could be sending her to her death. So there is that commitment from justice and the prosecution side. There is very much consequent management. I'm not responsible for the police, so I can't, I don't know those details. But if there are complaints about an official or a prosecutor or even a magistrate, those have to be reported to the Magistrates Commission, prosecutor or a justice official, we will follow that up. There is consequent management. So I would agree with Steve, we can always do more. Yes, unfortunately, the justice system is largely responsive. A crime gets committed and then it must be investigated and prosecuted. We need to look at better ways of preventing this hate, identifying where it's coming from. Is it from traditional perspectives? Is it from religious perspectives? Is it general toxic masculinity? And then look at engaging with people on that. But the law is, if you break the law, you'll be dealt with.
Obviously, that's a big issue, is the training aspect, which I know you're not going to be speaking to about that. But one thing you can speak to, and if you don't mind very quickly just touching on this, what are the challenges hampering the implementation of the Prevention and Combating of Hate Crimes and Hate Speech Bill that was introduced in 2018, which is essential in the protection of this community?
Yeah, Leanne, look, the problem is that regarding the hate speech provisions, and there are 2 constitutional court judgments awaited, which will give clarity as to what is permissible and what is not permissible in terms of the Constitution. If the bill is with Parliament, so it's not a question of it being implemented, it's got to be passed. And basically Parliament's view is that they can spend endless time debating whether this or that is permissible, but the court is going to rule on it.
Yeah.
The one is the Kwelane case, which was argued last year, so hopefully judgment will be coming out soon. And the other one is the Masuku case, which was argued sometime earlier. But let me just say that a lot of what is in the bill is already being implemented. So there is provision, for example, for training. That has been taking place. Obviously, more needs to take place. It doesn't need the bill for that to happen. So there is provision for victim impact statements. I mean, currently, what the Hate Crimes Bill does is to take an existing crime, and if it's committed through a motive of the dislike or hatred of the group the person belongs to, the victim belongs to, or you think they belong to, then it can become a hate crime.
Okay.
But murder is already serious, and if the person is found guilty of murder, and when it comes to sentencing, the state should lead evidence in aggravation of sentence, saying the sentence should be more serious because this was a hate crime.
All right.
And that is happening.
I have to leave it there. I loathe to, but we've got to take a break and say goodbye to our SABC2 viewers. But I thank both of you for your time. We will talk more. John Jeffery, the Deputy Minister of Justice and Constitutional Development, and of course, Steve Letsike, Executive Director of Access Chapter 2. Talking to us about the LGBTIQ plus community and all of the issues surrounding their very difficult time that they are going through. All right, let's quickly take a break. We'll see you after this.